Hey everybody, this is Dude, and this is the Bourbon Boys Advent Tasting Podcast. We pulled together some of our favorite picks to share with you as we count down to Christmas. We hope you get a chance to taste some of these great bourbon brands this holiday season with friends and family. Until then, bourbon on.
So settle in. We're going back to 1855.
Oh boy.
We're going to be here for a while.
I'll be back in a minute.
Okay.
I'm not sure Alton's
You might be able to pick it up. So, no, I mean, I'm not going to go in depth, but I thought the history of this place was actually pretty interesting, and much like some of the others that we've talked about, I think the origination and how it's evolved through Prohibition and to today is pretty interesting. So Wild Turkey actually kind of started. It didn't truly start in 1855, but
we're talking about Russels.
Yes,
You said Wild Turkey.
I did, because that's who makes Russels Reserve.
Well, there you go.
Oh, okay, that's a dot that wasn't connected.
Connection made.
Okay, connecting the dots. I know I was confused too, because when I was researching this one, Wild Turkey kept coming up, and I'm like, I've got to be looking at the wrong thing. Yeah. So Wild Turkey actually is a distillery that makes Russels Reserve, and the name Russels comes from a father-son duo who actually still today works at the distillery.
Cool.
So
from 1850 something.
Well, they're not from 1855. But
I guess the stuff. It's a good preserve.
It's a good story.
Yeah, I'll have more.
It's a good story. But no, back in 1855, there was a gentleman by the name of Austin Nichols, and he actually started a wine and spirits store, and he eventually would become the owner of Wild Turkey. So in 1869, the Rippey brothers, I think that's how you call it, or maybe it's Rippey. I'm not sure. Could be one or the other. So I'm sure they're both dead, so it doesn't matter. The Rippey brothers, they actually opened a distillery that was actually on the Wild Turkey Hill in Lawrenceville. I think it's Lawrenceville, or maybe just Lawrence, Kentucky. So it actually did start on Wild Turkey Hill.
Oh, all right.
But the name actually didn't necessarily come from that. The name actually was, as the company evolved, or the distillery evolved, a couple of the executives were actually on a hunting trip, and they were hunting wild turkey, and that's where the name actually came from. So,
okay.
Whether they piece those together or not, I'm not really sure. Jim Russell, so getting to the Russells part, actually joined the company in 1954. And in 1976, actually, the company introduced the first ever bourbon liqueur to the bourbon industry. Yeah, so there was a couple kind of interesting points along the whole timeline. So you can see we got to 1976 pretty fast. In 1981, his son Eddie actually joined the company, and they were actually one of the first to produce. Hang on a second.
I don't think I've ever heard of bourbon liqueur. We've had the bourbon cream,
Yeah,
and all the other bourbon derivatives, but I don't think I've seen or heard of a liqueur.
they actually created a product too later. I think it was around the late 90s, where it was a combination of bourbon and honey. And it was like a honey liqueur, but it actually combined those two things together. So in the 1991, 95, up to late 1999, they introduced a lot of firsts into the bourbon industry. So not just bourbon itself, but like the liqueurs and these honey types of things. So
something had to take the place of Zima.
I guess,
right?
Yeah.
Wow.
So in 2000, though, Jimmy was actually inducted into the Master Distillery Hall of Fame. So he's actually a master distiller.
Cool.
And his son fell suit to that actually later in 2015, where he was given the title of master distiller within Wild Turkey. So at that time, they were the only father-son duo in the world that were both master distillers. So
that's pretty awesome.
I just thought the story was kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So
Very cool.
There's a lot more to it, but that's all we're going to talk about.
I bet the Christmas parties were amazing.
I bet they're fantastic. So the bottle is actually, it's bottled at 90 proof, which you can see on the bottle. It's a small batch, and it has a hint of caramel and vanilla in it. So when you actually taste it, it reminds me a little bit of the TX.
Mm-hmm. Not as sweet as the TX.
It's not as sweet. I think the TX is a little smoother, but the finish on this is actually pretty smooth.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think I felt a little bit more of an initial bite on this one than the TX, but I still thought there was a really good flavor there. The interesting thing about this that was called out, and I don't know if this is the same in a lot of others, but they actually do not use, they use all non-GMO produced grains. So they refuse to put any genetically made grains into their product. So that's something that they actually really call out around their product, in that they still actually hold the original strain of the yeast at their distillery in Kentucky, and they continue to use that in the production of the bourbon. So, so I thought that was cool. Pretty typical white oak American. They do a number 4 char on their barrels, which is called the alligator char, and that has to do with where the name comes from. Is actually what the staves actually look like inside the barrel. So they kind of have a glossy, rough texture to them, like alligator skins. So number 4 char actually is often referred to as alligator char. So
nice.
Yeah. That's all I got.
What's the, do we know what the mix is? Corn to rye?
I don't know what the mix is. I tried to find it, and that was not revealed on the site. I didn't see it with any of the bourbons that Wild Turkey actually produces.
So no recipe card out there?
No recipe card.
No. Well, let's give it a shot.
Okay.
Yeah.
How are you taking yours?
On the rocks.
Rocks.
Yeah, y'all's balls are making lots of noise.
Dave's a neat guy.
I am a neat guy.
And quiet, apparently.
Yeah.
This is really good.
It is good.
It is good, yeah.
I really like it.
So, I mean, it's interesting because the second taste I've had actually is a little smoother than the first, but I think that's pretty common.
Yep.
It's got a long finish too.
It does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It does. It and they talk a little bit about that on their site, how the taste actually sits with you.
Yeah,
It does.
it's nice.
So,
Yeah, it doesn't have that high evap, feel to it where it's like, all right, now it's gone.
no.
I wonder what you talked about the extra char, the number 4 char, the alligator char. The Clyde May had it, talks about an extra char. So I'm assuming 4 is a higher number. And it was fairly smooth like this. So I wonder what that contributes to the flavor.
The smoothness?
Yeah.
I think something I read in here, there's a little bit of a smoky flavor to it that they hint to. Now, whether that has to do with the alligator char, that I don't know. But that'd be interesting to look further into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. I like it.
Nice pick, Kurt.
Yeah. I think it's got a good story, too. You got this father-son team.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Following in, so it sounds like son followed father.
Son followed father.
Okay.
Yeah, the son came into the company in 1981.
Oh, okay. So much later. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
much later.
30-something years later.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost 30.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool. And to have that bond,
Yeah.
it would be an interesting thing to see if that still exists. Like, as we start to talk to other distillers, I'd be curious to see how many are generational,
Legacy.
Yeah. And I want to do it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That this is something that is the family identity, and and is there a plan to keep that going? Are there additional Russells that are, in the wings earning their titles?
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting too with something like this that's truly turned into a craft, right? Where you see, sons following fathers and daughters following as well, and kind of taking something that a family stands for, and taking them to the next level. It's pretty cool.
That's very.
Yep.
But it stands out too. If you think of how few, at least in my mind, how few people I know still have a generational connection to a vocation or a passion like this, where 2 or 3 generations ago it was probably more accepted, but now as we come into kind of going off and doing your own thing, and your own identity, and and all of the either the opportunities or the expectations that you just go and find your own thing.
Right. Yep. Yeah. For generations, it was you're an apprentice or a gopher or learning the same trade just by being around and helping out. But you're right, that is no longer the case.
Yep.
All right. I like it. That's a good call.
Yeah.
Good pick. From all of us Bourbon Boys, we want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Bourbon on.